Hello ladies and gents, Tom here, and this is a companion video to go alongside my Witcher 3 playthrough, and it is a Gwent tutorial. Gwent is one of my absolute favourite things about Witcher 3. It's a card game, and it is so much fun. Out of my just over 100 hours in Witcher 3, I must have put about 20 or 30 of them into Gwent. I just love it. It's just the best. It's the best thing ever. So this video will be a relatively short overview on the mechanics of Gwent, how to play it, what it is, and hopefully by the end of it you should be well versed in the game of Gwent, and will have just as much fun as I've had playing it. So without further ado, I will show you the game. Right, so absolute first things first, when you encounter Gwent in the world of Witcher 3, you will be asked what amount of money you want to put forward. As you can see here, you can bet between 1 and 10 crowns, and whatever you put down, you'll get double that back. So if you bet 1, you'll get 2, if you bet 10, you'll get 20 crowns back. And this is the first screen that you see when you start a game of Gwent. As you can see here, there are 4 leaders per faction, and there are 4 factions: the Northern Realm, Nilfgaardian Empire, Scoia'tael, and Monsters. Each leader card represents the same person, but they have different abilities. The first one here says, pick an impenetrable fog card from your deck and play it instantly, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. The second allows you to clear any weather effects resulting from biting frost, torrential rain, or impenetrable fog. The third allows you to double the strength of all your siege unit cards, providing that a commander's horn is not present in that row. And finally, upon activating the fourth, it allows you to destroy your enemy's strongest siege unit if the combined strength of all the siege units on that row is 10 or more. Now to quickly run over the rest of what we see on the screen, on the left is your card collection. Now these are all the cards that aren't in your current deck. And on the right are your cards in deck, so these are all the cards that are in your deck. Now what you want to be aiming for here is 22 total unit cards, because 22 is the minimum amount you can have in your deck. And the fewer cards you have in your deck, the more likely you are to draw a card in your hand that you want to use. Next, you want to add to your deck as many special cards as you feel like using. I personally want 1 of each weather card, a decoy, and a commander's horn in my deck, but it's really up to you. And I'll go over what each of those cards do later on in the video. Finally, if you have any hero cards available to you at this point in the game, then I suggest putting all of them in your deck, because they are really good cards, and yeah, just stick them in, they're really good. Okay, so now we're through the menus, we can play our first game of Gwent. Now, first things first, the AI is going to roll a coin to decide who goes first, and will take you straight to the draw screen. Now on the draw screen you get a selection of 10 cards, and these will be the 10 cards that you play in your hand for the rest of the match. Now here you can decide to redraw 2 of those 10 cards if the ones you've got aren't to your liking. Okay, now on to the basic mechanics of Gwent. Now if you're new to card games or new to Gwent, this screen might be a bit intimidating, but if you look to the bottom left you'll see a picture of Geralt with the Northern Realms insignia. There'll be a 10 with some cards next to it. Now that is how many cards you've got in your hand. When you play a card, that number will go down. Next to that are 2 red gems, and these red gems are counters. When you win or lose a round, whoever lost that round will lose one of those counters. When both those counters are gone, that means you've lost the match. Now if you look at the main playing board, you'll see 3 rows with 3 numbers next to them. Now the first row is represented by a sword, which is the melee card row. The second row is represented by a bow, which is the archery row. And the third is represented by a siege engine, which is the siege row. Now every single card in Gwent is going to have one of these icons on the bottom right of them. There can either be melee cards, archery cards, or siege cards. Now every time you play a card, your card will go into whichever one of these 3 rows it represents. Also on the card in the top left hand corner will be a number. This number represents the power value of that card. Now essentially what you want to be doing in Gwent is to have more power than your opponent. So you want to play cards in each of the 3 rows to outscore your opponent with power. And this score is represented by the collective large number you see next to each player's red gems. And similar to other card games, the most basic cards in Gwent will just have a power value, and that'll be it. They'll have no special effects. It's just a power value, they're just the number you put on a board. But some cards have special values, so you'll play them and they'll have effects to either the board or the game. And we'll take a look at each different type of card right now. Okay, so one of the earliest and most basic tactics in Gwent is the use of weather cards. Now, there are 4 weather cards in total. The first is called Biting Frost, which when used resets the score of all the opponent's melee unit cards to 1. The second is named Impenetrable Fog, which does the same thing but only with the archery row. The third is Torrential Rain, which does the same thing with the siege row. and the fourth is called Clear Weather, which resets every single weather effect currently on the board. Alright, so now let's take a look at the first and probably the most important effect unit card. These cards are called spy cards, and when played, they will automatically go to the opponent's side of the field, adding to their score. However, they will allow you to draw 2 more cards from your deck. This can be a very important effect, because during Gwent, you're not allowed to draw any more cards than the 10 you drew at the start of the match. And in Gwent, having more cards than the opponent means having more score than the opponent. So I suggest whenever you get a new spy card, you immediately add it to your deck. The next type of card I want to talk about is the Type Bond card. Now there are 3 Type Bond cards in both the Northern Realms and Nilfgaardian Empire decks. There are multiple copies of each of these cards, and when 2 of the same name are placed next to each other on the field, both their scores are doubled. So for example, if I play 1 Blue Striped Commando from the Northern Realms deck, worth 4 score, and the next turn I play a second, both of their scores are doubled to 8, making a total of 16. This effect can be completed with any of the other 5 Type Bond cards, however you can't place a Type Bond card next to a different card. It has to be a Type Bond card of the exact same name for the effect to work. The next variety of cards are called Scorch cards. Now what Scorch cards do quite simply is when played they remove the highest scoring card on either your side or your opponent's side of the field. The first type of Scorch card is called Scorch, and it does just that. The second type of Scorch card is called Villain Trettenmirth, and it's a neutral card that when played removes the highest scoring card on the opposite side of the field to your own. The best thing about these 2 cards is that if the highest score value currently on the board is shared by more than 1 card, then when the Scorch card is played, both of those cards are removed from play. Next up are Medic cards. Now when Medic cards are put onto the field, they open up a list of all the cards currently in your discard pile. You can choose from one of these cards and bring them back to the board. The only cards that can't be affected by the Medic card effect are hero cards. The Morale Boost cards are early game unit cards that add +1 to all cards in that row except for themselves. This effect is used most potently in conjunction with leader cards such as Foltest the Siege Master's ability to double the strength of all siege units in a row. Now for a card type exclusive to the Monster or Scoia'tael decks. The Agile card allows you to choose either the melee or the range row to place the card down into. This can be especially useful if you want to avoid weather effects. Muster cards are also cards exclusive to the Scoia'tael and Monster decks, but are seen most commonly in game used in the Monster deck. These cards, when played, immediately play cards of the same name from your hand or your deck. For example, if you were to play a card with the subtitle of Arakas, all Arakas cards in your deck would immediately be put on the board. Muster cards are used most effectively in conjunction with a card like Commander's Horn, and they can be used to very quickly overwhelm your opponent. The final variety of card currently available in The Witcher 3 are called hero cards, and these cards are exactly what they say on the tin. They're cards based off the various heroes of the Witcher universe, so people like Geralt and Ciri. These special unit cards cannot be affected by any other type of card or effect card in the game. So once they are on the board, they cannot be altered in any way. They can't be brought back to life by medic cards, they can't be boosted by morale boost cards, and they can't be removed from play by Scorch cards. Once they are there, they're there, and they're good, so use them. So that's all the card types and the basic mechanics of Gwent out the way, and now we can move on to a few advanced tactics that I like to use with the Northern Realms deck. To win every time, basically. So yeah, enjoy. Okay, so I'd say this first tactic is probably the easiest to get to grips with. It utilises weather cards and hero cards, and the fact that hero cards aren't affected by weather cards. It's very important in this tactic. So as you can see, the opponent has played lots of monster cards, which are a big factor of the monster deck, and he would be winning by quite a lot right now if I hadn't just played a Biting Frost card. Now the Biting Frost card resets all his cards to 1, which means that from his massive lead he's now back down to easily catchable on my part. And from there I put down a John Talis hero card, which gives me 10 points straight away, not affected by the Biting Frost. So what's happened here is, all his cards have been reset, and my one is unresettable. So that means I can catch him really quickly, and turn the tide of the match. This next tactic involves both spy and decoy cards. Now as you can see in this match, this tactic is utilised by both me and my opponent. Now what's happened here is that I've played a spy card, and it's gone to the opponent's side of the field. I've gained 2 cards, but now that card is on his side of the field. What he's now done is played a decoy card, and returned that spy card that's now on his side to his hand. What he does next is he plays the card, which goes back to my side of the field, and he draws 2 cards. Then, I use my decoy on my original card, sending it back to my hand, so I can use it again. And next up, I'm going to talk about a very, very simple tactic, this involves using 2 Type Bond cards and the Commander's Horn. Now what you see here is that I've played 2 Catapults, taken them both up to 16 points, and then I've simply played a Commander's Horn which doubles their score to 32 points each, making a massive 64 points. Okay, now this next tactic involves both the Villain Mirth and Biting Frost cards. Now Villain Mirth requires that if the enemy's melee row has a combined strength of 10 or more, when played, the strongest card in that row will be destroyed. Now if you use the Biting Frost card when the enemy has more than 10 cards in the melee row, then all cards will be reduced to 1 and their combined strength will automatically be higher than 10. And if you then play Villain Mirth, all cards in that melee row will be destroyed. The final advanced tactic I'll be going over today is very similar to the Spy and Decoy tactic I went over just a minute ago. Now this tactic involves the use of Medic and Decoy cards. Now, as we've gone over before, if you put down a Medic card, you can choose a card from the discard pile and return it to play. However, if you have more than one card in the discard pile, you can use a Decoy on the Medic after using it the first time and use it again. That way, you can bring as many cards back from the discard pile as you have decoys. And that about wraps it up for Gwent and its tactics today. Up next, I'll be showing a list of all the Gwent cards currently available in the game, so if for whatever reason you don't want to see that, then this will be the time to check out. Thank you all for watching. I hope this has been relatively helpful to you, and I hope you can play Gwent with a bit more ease now. So yep, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.